Hi there, my name is Marley and welcome back to my booktube channel. Today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. This is a tag that you are supposed to do halfway through the year to just sort of summarize the books you've read so far this year. This is actually the third time I am doing this tag, so I'm on to my third year on BookTube, and it's always one of my most favorite videos to film and to watch from everyone. I might have filmed this a little bit early. No one has started uploading their mid-year freakout tags yet, but I'm hoping that everyone will soon. I'm filming this on the 10th of June, so pretty much halfway through the year, nearly halfway through the year. And I have already reached the halfway point in my Goodreads goal of reading 100 books. I think I'm at 53. So I thought it was fitting to film this now. I'm pretty much halfway through my reading for the year. One of the things I wanted to do quickly before getting into the tags is review some of my reading stats. This is the first year where I've actually been tracking more of my reading stats, and I like to share them in my wrap-ups. So let's first look at Goodreads and what they are telling me about my year in books so far. So apparently, according to Goodreads, I've read 18,731 pages and 54 books, but they are counting one of my DNFs, so I know it's actually 53. The shortest book I read so far has been Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is the first book in the Wayward Children series. So far I've only read this first one, but I definitely want to continue the rest of the series. And the longest book I read was, of course, A Court of Rings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. Her books are always very, very long. The average book length I've read in 2022 is 346 pages, which I think makes sense for me. The most popular book I've read this year has been The Hobbit, so that is not shocking that that was such a popular book. I knew when I read it that it was a very beloved book. Unfortunately, I didn't love it as much as so many other people, but as I've said before, I didn't really have that nostalgia for it. The least popular book that I have read was the last book in the Promised Neverland series, which was the manga series that I finished earlier this year. And my average rating for 2022 was 3.9. The highest rated book I read on Goodreads was A Court of Mist and Fury, which makes sense because I actually read this for a reading my highest rated books on Goodreads TBR reading blog, so that definitely fits. And the first review I left this year was The Love Hypothesis. I guess that was the first book I read this year. Now, Storygraph has a few other stats, so let's see what they are telling me about my year. As you can see, this is the mood breakdown. So if you watch my wrap-ups, you'll hear me say every month I mostly read dark, adventurous, and mysterious books. Mostly fast-paced, mostly books between 300 and 500 pages, all fiction. Storygraph decides the genres, you don't put that in. So according to them, they say that I've read the most fantasy books and young adult books, which kind of makes sense because I feel like I'm getting back into my young adult fantasy era, but I am surprised that horror and thriller would not be higher on this list. For the most read authors, Keiyu Shirei was my most read author so far because I read that whole manga series. Next is 2 books by Ruth Ware, 2 books by Saba Tahir, and 2 books by Sarah J Maas. I am currently reading series by both Saba and Sarah J Maas, so that makes sense. And as you can see from this graph, the number of books I read a month, I had my best month in January, again because I read that manga series, which were obviously a lot quicker to get through. And then I've been averaging around like 7 books a month since then. Then I've also been tracking my reading in this other like spreadsheet where I actually say what I think the genres are. So according to this tracker, the biggest genre I've read is thriller. So that's what I thought. I do feel like I read most thriller books, and that was at 22.6%. And then next we have fantasy at 20.8%. Again, next is dystopian. Because of that manga series, I said that it was a dystopian series. Then I have a graph of what format I've been reading the books. 0 audiobooks, as I'm not someone who listens to audiobooks, and then 58.5 of my reading has been physical and 41.5 has been ebooks, so pretty even between the two. For audience, for what I've been inputting for the audience, it's mostly been YA at 52.8 and and then adult, and then new adult, and then only 2 middle grade and 1 children's book. Then I have a graph tracking own voices. I've read 22.6% of own voices right now. For gender identity, I've read 98% cisgender, so I definitely need to step up my diversity there. For author race, I've read 56% white authors, 7.5% black authors, 34% Asian authors, and 1.9% Latinx authors. So I'm not doing terribly. I'm reading from a lot of Asian authors this month or this year, but I could definitely step up my diversity here as well. Okay, moving on to the questions. So the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2022? This one was a little tricky for me because I've read some really good books, but it was hard for me to pick like a top favorite. But I think I'm gonna go with Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I just recently read this book last month and it just really blew me away. It is a YA fantasy book about these 2 sisters who get caught up in this magical competition called Caraval. It has a very like mysterious, ominous, yet whimsical atmosphere. I adored the main romance in this book, and I really adored the mystery and the adventure throughout, as it's sort of like a quest with the one sister trying to find her other sister and win this Caraval competition. So I just feel like it had a lot of elements that I really enjoyed. Second question is, what is the best sequel you read so far in 2022? I have been making my way through a lot of different series, and I think the best sequel for me would have been A Court of Mist and Fury that I read at the beginning of the year. That's by Sarah J Maas, and it's the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. I don't need to explain what this is about, but this is sort of like the most well-loved book in the series, and I am on that hype train with everyone else. I think it was the best book in the series that I've read, and I don't foresee anything topping it, as it is the book that really develops the relationship between Rhysand and Feyre, which is the main couple in the book. And so my favorite part of a romance is always that development build-up stage where, you know, they go from enemies to friends to lovers, and I think a lot of other people are with me on that. So that's definitely the best sequel I've read. Number 3 is, what new releases haven't you read yet but you want to? So I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston came out I think last month, so I really want to get to this one as I've really enjoyed their other books, Red, White, and Royal Blue and One Last Stop. This is a YA book, so it's their first YA book, so I'm a little apprehensive about that. I've seen a little bit of mixed reviews about it, but I'm still excited to get to it. Also, I'm pretty sure the date that I'm uploading this is the release day for The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, and that's probably my most anticipated book of the year because Riley Sager is one of my favorite thriller authors. Even his book last year that came out that so many people didn't like, I still liked it. So I really have confidence that I'm gonna love this one. He always focuses his books on some sort of popular trope or setting, and this time it is following a woman who lives in a house across the lake, and so it's kind of like The Woman in the Window, a take on that trope of like the sad woman in her house that is just watching her neighbors and then witnesses some sort of crime. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. So really excited to read that. I think I'm gonna do like a special reading vlog for it because I'm so excited. Next question is, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And I actually have a lot of books I realized that I'm looking forward to when I was researching this a little bit, because I never post those videos where I talk about all my anticipated new releases like a lot of people do. So I'm just gonna quickly list off some of the ones I'm really excited for. First of all, there's It Girl by Ruth Ware. It's a thriller, and I've really been enjoying Ruth Ware's thrillers. We have The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is obviously the third and final book in the Inheritance Games trilogy, which is a YA thriller I'm absolutely loving. Then we have Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. This is the sequel to Legendborn, which is a YA fantasy book that I really liked, and the main couple in that book is like a ship I'm really looking forward to reading more about. There's obviously, of course, It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, the follow-up to It Ends With Us, which is one of my favorite Colleen Hoover books along with everyone else. Taylor Jenkins Reid has another book this year, of course, and it is called Carrie Soto is Back. And I really don't know much about this except that she's sticking with her theme of writing about famous people, as I think this follows an athlete in this book. I am not really into sports or athletes, but I'll definitely be reading this because it's Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I'm sure she has a really cool take on it. There's Family Remains by Lisa Jewell, and she is one of my favorite thriller authors. There's of course Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, which you saw I read The Love Hypothesis this year and really loved. And there's Heat Wave, which is the third book in the Extraordinary series by TJ Klune. And you guys know I've been loving that series too. Number 5 is What Has Been Your Biggest Disappointment? And I would say I've had a few disappointments this year, but probably the biggest one was the Zodiac Academy book that I read. I did read it in a vlog where I purposely read books that I thought I was gonna hate, but I did not think I was gonna hate it as much as I did. I really had hope for it just because of the concept of it being like a YA fantasy that followed mythology that had to do with astrology and zodiac signs, because I'm really into that. So I had a little bit of hope for that, but unfortunately it's very heavy on the bully romance, and I really did not like that. So I just could not even consider reading more of that series. Number 6 is Your Biggest Surprise. I think my biggest surprise was probably You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogel. I read a decent amount of romance, but they're not really my favorites. But this was probably one of my favorite romances that I read, and I really didn't expect it just because it's a little bit underrated. But I highly recommend it if you want like a fun romance book that definitely gets silly. Like, it's not like your average romance book. I mean, it gets very silly. It doesn't get as steamy, but I think it was just hilarious if you want like a comedic read, and then by the end the romance does become pretty sweet as well. Number 7 is Your New Favorite Author, and they could be a new author in general or just new to you. One of my favorite authors would probably be Ashley Winstead. She wrote In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, which was a thriller book I read a couple months ago and really enjoyed. I give it 5 stars. A lot of people were hyping this up at the end of last year. It follows a group of friends, and one of their friends died when they were back in college, and now they're all kind of having this class reunion and trying to get to the bottom of what happened all those years ago, and everyone is a suspect and everyone has secrets that they're hiding and stuff like that. I think she wrote really interesting, very flawed characters, and I know she has like 2 books coming out this year, so I'm definitely interested to read more from her and see what other stories she puts together. Just realized I missed question 8 for newest fictional crush, and I don't crush on too many characters these days, but that would definitely be Charlie from Book Lovers. This is an adult romance I'm sure you've heard about, but I really loved Charlie as he is a book editor and a very bookish person, similar to myself, obviously. He's obviously described as very hot, very sarcastic and funny, so I love that. And I also really related to his character being from a small town and not really feeling like he fit in, and then moving to New York, or like a bigger city, and then really coming into himself and having a better time. The other one would probably be Julian from Caraval. As I kind of mentioned, I really loved him in that book. I thought he was also very funny and dark and mysterious as well, and I loved his relationship with Scarlett in that book too. Next question is the newest favorite character. Now for this, I would maybe say Nesta from the ACOTAR series. I didn't overly love her in the first book, but as the books go on and we're seeing more of her character, especially in the third book, I really was quite liking her. She is a bit of a trope of like the mean girl character that as you get to know, you see she's actually just hurting inside. You actually see she's not really mean, it's more just tough, and she's protective of her loved ones, and she's softer on the inside kind of thing. And I know that she has a book that follows her point of view, A Court of something. What is the newest one? I cannot remember. It's Silver Flames. I think this book completely follows her and her love story, so I'm very excited to get to that. Another character I really liked was Vero from the Finlay Donovan book. Finlay Donovan is killing it. She was like Finlay's sidekick. Not that I didn't love Finlay, but she was kind of the character I preferred, as she was the more like strategic, calm, smart one when they were dealing with all the craziness with the murders in this book. So I definitely liked her character. Number 10 is a book that made you cry. I struggled to remember what books that made me cry, to be honest. I haven't been crying a lot lately, but because I read it semi-recently, I do remember tearing up in A Court of Wings and Ruin. I know I've mentioned that multiple times in this video. Unfortunately, I hate to be that person that just talks about Sarah J Maas all the time, but there was a big battle scene, and I remember specifically like saying to my boyfriend like, oh, this is kind of annoying, I don't really like big battle scenes. And then I went back to reading and instantly like started almost crying from what was being described, like what was happening, because as kind of like annoying as those scenes can be with just a bunch of people fighting, a lot of times there's very dramatic moments, like maybe a character dies or almost dies, so it definitely does kind of jerk your tears a little bit. Number 11 is a book that made you happy. I'm gonna go with Flashfire by TJ Klune. His books always make me really happy, especially in this series. This is the sequel to Extraordinaries, which is a YA fantasy series dealing with superheroes, and we have a gay main character and gay love story. Perfect to pick up during Pride Month, but it's really, really cute. Probably one of the series I talk the most about on my channel because it's one of my favorites. Question 12 is, what's the most beautiful book you've bought this year? Either been given or you bought yourself. I actually haven't bought a lot of books for myself this year. I've been doing well. So the only thing I could think of is a book I already showed, and that's I Kiss Shara Wheeler. I think the design for this cover is cute, but then I also got the Indigo exclusive edition, so I think there's some slight changes, like this purple background. I think the spine is very cute and will look really cute on a bookshelf. The end pages are also really cute with that same flower design, and it has a little letter on the actual cover, which I always like when books do this with the foiling. Question 13 and the last question is, what books do you have to read before the end of the year? I literally do have my reading plans, or like a lot of my reading plans, mapped out for the end of the year. I definitely want to read as many of my physical books as I can that I have on my TBR card. Some other ones I want to get to very soon are I think it's called Four Aunties and a Wedding. This is the sequel to Dial A for Aunties, which I read last year and really liked. It's kind of like a cozy mystery. It's very funny. It was one of the most funny books that I read last year, and my friend has read the sequel already and says it's so funny, so laugh out loud great. So I really want to get to that. As already mentioned, I did read the first Finlay Donovan book, and I would love to read the second one. This is another cozy mystery series about this author who just keeps getting wrapped up in like murders, I guess. It's gonna be like a 5-book series or something, so I definitely got to get on that and read the second book, because I think the third book's coming out pretty soon. I also really want to read the third book in the Summer I Turned Pretty series by Jenny Han. I just recently read the second one, and I'm trying to finish the whole series before the adaptation comes out. I think it's a TV show. If you don't know, this is Jenny Han's first trilogy before To All the Boys I Loved Before, and it follows this young girl who always goes to this cottage every summer with her family friends, and we're following her the summer she turned pretty. So when she kind of becomes like a teenager, like 15 or 16, and she gets wrapped up in a bit of a love triangle with her mom's friends' sons. A very classic YA, tropey, but also very cute, heartwarming, angsty, all that. Grabbing this off my book cart, I also really want to get to Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. Again, the Netflix adaptation came out. I think it's a show. So I had this book on my shelves for a little bit now, so I'd love to read it. It's just so big and daunting, and I've actually heard some mixed things, I think, about this and about the adaptation, but I really do just want to be able to read it and then watch it. Another one I want to prioritize is When Night Breaks by Janella Angeles. This is the sequel to Where Dreams Descend, which I read last month, and it was one of my favorite books of the month. So this is a YA fantasy series about magicians. There's mystery, there's love, there's magic, all the things I've been loving lately. And then of course the series I've mentioned a million times. I would love to continue the A Court of Thorns and Roses series and read A Court of Frost and Starlight, I think is the next one, and it's the novella, which a lot of people say is just a pointless book, but I'll read that, I guess. And then I can move on to A Court, I'm forgetting it again, of Silver Flames, which is the Nesta book. So if I could read both of those books the rest of the year, that'd be great, and then I'd be done with her second series. So that is my mid-year book freak out tag. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you have filmed and uploaded this tag, because I would love to watch all of those videos. Please like, comment, subscribe if you have not already, and add me on Goodreads to keep up with my reading. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.